Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining today's web event, the Re-Enrollment Model, 3 Keys to Retaining Exchange Members. My name is Alex Bell, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar. As Gerald said, we'd like to invite you to join the conversation by submitting your questions about this webinar using the Q&A section provided. After the presentation, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if we don't happen to get to yours, we'll be sure to follow up with an email response to you shortly. We'll also be sending you an email with a link to the recorded version of today's webinar, along with some additional resources and information. So as always, please feel free to share these with your colleagues. We have two great speakers today, Jay Castergine and Vance Clipson. Jay has over 20 years of sales, marketing, and consulting experience dealing with enterprise accounts. His vertical industry experience includes healthcare, utilities, financial services, and telecommunications, as well as knowledge of business management and all phases of contact center technology. Designing and building innovative solutions that strive for exceptional customer service has been a key focus in Jay's career. Prior to joining Nuance, Jay held numerous management positions at Western Union and Electronic Information Systems. Our second presenter is Vance Clipson. Vance is a senior principal at Nuance Communications and helps direct overall strategy, marketing, and go-to-market execution for Nuance's enterprise healthcare business. Vance brings more than 20 years of experience translating healthcare industry needs and data into market strategy, products, and programs. Prior to joining Nuance, Vance held positions with Milliman, Pacific Care Health Systems, and the American Cancer Society. And now I'll hand it over to Vance to get us started.
All right. Thanks, Alex. So we have a lot of ground to cover today and quite a bit of material that I think you'll find really helpful, or I hope you will. We'll start out by very briefly looking at the wave of members we've seen come through both public and private marketplaces, including some retention, switching, and shopping rates that kind of help define the issue that some of us are facing. Then we'll look at who these new health consumers are and what their service expectations are, and the actions they're likely to take, both kind of positive and negative, depending on their experience with a health plan. And of course, then we'll spend the majority of our time today talking about 3 key strategies for creating a positive experience for these members and the tools that support these strategies. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. But first, I just want to spend one slide telling you who we are, I promise. At its most basic level, Nuance Communications simplifies how people interact with technology in their everyday lives. So in fact, it's really rare to go a day without experiencing Nuance, whether on a mobile device, in a car, at a doctor's office, on a website, or through an 800 number. For customer service, we enable companies to better and more cost-effectively manage customer interactions across channels. So those are both interactions that customers initiate through the phone, web, and mobile, and those that the company initiates with its customers through voice or text messaging or email. And as you might guess, we'll be discussing a few of those capabilities in this presentation. Historically, attention existed within companies to either deliver a high-quality customer experience using live agents or enable operational efficiency through automation. But by leveraging Nuance technology to create more human conversations with your customers, you can resolve that tension and achieve both a higher customer satisfaction and lower operating costs. So that's my commercial for us very briefly. So I've likened this massive influx of health plan members that we're here to discuss these past 2 years as similar to a tidal wave in a lot of ways. And whether it's been through different categories of insurance exchanges or Medicaid expansion, that growth has really been significant, as we all know. Not only has the sheer number of interactions associated with these shoppers and enrollees created issues in terms of incoming calls, outbound communications, and other administrative functions, but also in terms of service expectations, and that's what we're here to talk about today. The millennials, or the young invincibles, as some call them, are that 18 to 34 range you see on the right-hand side of the pie. I accidentally flipped one. They're the largest portion of this wave, and they're changing the overarching consumer behavior in this market, as well as others. So now on to this slide. So, whether owing to millennials or not, these new exchange members are more fickle than what we're used to. 2 very helpful reports from J.D. Power and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation really provide some great data in this area. So First of all, the retention of state-based exchange members from 2014 to 2015 ranged between 67 and 90%. The upper end of this isn't bad, and that was from California and Kentucky. Colorado was one of many exchanges, though, that used automatic renewals, and they still came in at 67% retention, which is clearly lower than we want. Now, even with that automatic renewal option, enrollees engaged in a much higher rate of plan switching compared to other health insurance contexts. So, for example, available data for plan switching shows that 29% of enrollees eligible for automatic renewal in the federal marketplace switched plans, and that amount doubled in Rhode Island, which had 62% of enrollees changing plans. And then another data point is how members shop. So re-enrollees primarily use online research while shopping, particularly through health plan websites there that you see on the right-hand side, followed by general online search and online consumer reviews. And we're going to come back to that a little bit later. But one takeaway for health plans is that your website should be as informative and as accessible as possible during the re-enrollment window. And we'll be zeroing in on some specific tools for the website and otherwise in a few minutes. So these new health consumers are exhibiting buying behaviors that are different from what we've been used to in years past. So when I was working on the health plan side, most plans were prioritizing the employer group buyers, the HR administrators, CFOs, and their brokers and consultants. But now plans have had to expand their thinking and really put themselves in the shoes of a customer that is used to being treated differently, and we've seen this kind of evolution over the past couple of years. Consumers have many digital relationships with a variety of companies. So by our count, 26 is typical, and many of us have more. So that's likely to include a bank or two, our gas company, a couple of airlines, a number of retail stores, and members expect to have similar modern customer experiences with healthcare payers now. That's the key thing I want to get across with this slide, is that your plan is no longer different than any other consumer relationship that they have. It's simply no longer competitive to simply be better than your industry peers. You must deliver a consumer experience that lives up to the expectations created by all these other industries. But we're just not attaining that right now. In this PricewaterhouseCoopers study, healthcare ranks 6 out of 8 industries in customer experience. So we're definitely behind, but this also clearly demonstrates an opportunity for those of you on the phone to innovate, improve, and gain an advantage over your competitors. And one of these key areas requiring innovation is in the automation and self-service areas. These technologies, which we'll be discussing, are really critical if we're going to engage that exchange population. So, for example, 88% of millennials and 86% of baby boomers have used self-service options now. And a growing majority of all consumers believe self-service is an improvement over traditional live customer service. So just one example of that, 41% of millennials want to get an automated premium payment reminder. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later. So we've talked a bit about what kind of experiences consumers now expect, but what are the risks and rewards in that area? Well, you have both members and shoppers hitting your site and calling into your contact center with what our data and experience shows to be very specific sets of questions. And whether they're shoppers asking about pregnancy coverage, members that are on your public site trying to figure out how to get their ID card replaced, or a member that's logged in and wants to know the status of a claim, the consistent attribute amongst all these consumers is that they want their answers as quickly and easily as they can get them. What they don't want are some of these issues when they call you. And this is taken from a Wakefield research survey of 1,000 American consumers to find out what inspires loyalty and what really irritates and annoys in an IVR experience. So these are the top 8 complaints cited in the survey. And every traditional IVR experience is likely guilty of these issues. What this means is that unless you're actively working to improve the IVR experience, you're automatically driving members to agents and reinforcing consumer beliefs that the IVR won't help them solve their problems. So, this not only drives up contact center costs, but it also ripples into member retention. That's really kind of the bottom line. And if you're not doing it right yet, you're definitely not alone. So what you're looking at here are actual member quotes regarding a top 3 health plan's IVR and how it was handling marketplace shoppers during the 2015 open enrollment. So my bet is that much of this feedback that you see, these quotes on your screen, looks really familiar to you either as a consumer or in your role with a carrier. And these experiences that consumers have really don't come without repercussions. According to one study, more than 1 in 3 consumers say they might stop doing business with a company altogether after one single bad IVR experience. It's pretty severe punishment, but it's not too surprising. And this statistic is broader and perhaps more impactful for those of us seeking to retain members and attract new ones. So 87% of consumers say a company's customer service has a significant impact on their decision to do business with them. So kind of think back to those kind of shopping and retention numbers that we talked about in the beginning. We really have to get it right if we're going to retain members. So one final slide to scare you with the consequences. This is another Wakefield research survey that found 78% will take action after any bad customer experience. And if you recall from one of those earlier slides, those shopping for plans through the exchanges primarily use health plan websites, general online search, and online consumer reviews. So the implications of negative reviews and surveys really can add up, and you see the numbers there on the right-hand side of the slide. So there's also good news, though. Getting the customer experience right is a significant competitive advantage and can have dramatic effects. 88% of customers have also taken positive action after a good customer service experience. So now we'll share some key strategies and tools that can help you achieve that. Jay?
Thanks, Vance. So as the slide mentions, we'll be discussing some tools and strategies that can improve the member experience and obviously drive enrollment and re-enrollment. So as we look at this, and this is a classic in terms of, it's the catch-22. On the left, it's how do you increase the performance and efficiency of the system to drive whatever technology you deploy? How do you drive cost savings? And I can tell you right now that in all my years of experience across multiple industries, no one moves forward with any deployment of technology unless you can prove out the business case. It has to obviously increase efficiency. It has to reduce costs. But while that becomes a real focal point in order to get funding, and you're obviously competing with other projects going on within your enterprise to determine how to kind of put everything together to move forward with certain types of projects, there's a lot of competition for dollars. You have to prove out that business case, number one. But as you move forward with the deployment of any of this technology, it has to be focused on the member. It has to be about the member experience. It has to be consistent. The key in this is just if you don't focus on the member experience and put something together that's easy and efficient and focused truly on the member, and you lose sight and you try to just literally drive the primary goal of trying to be better in terms of cost containment, then you lose sight in terms of how to deploy the technology to get utilization. And the key above anything that we see here, regardless of whether it's web or IVR or mobile, is you've got to kind of get that member to buy in and to utilize that. So the 3 keys that we're talking about today on any of the deployment of these types of solutions is it's got to be intuitive. In many cases, you have to have identification, you have to get caller intent, you have to get utilization. So in the area of identification, it's usernames and passwords, it's mobile phones with access, with IVRs, it's the whole member identification and date of birth. It's really every single organization is unique and different in terms of how they interpret HIPAA and standards and how many tokens they use in terms of whether it's member ID and or even some organizations still use Social Security number these days. So the key is if you can find out who they are and you can get them to identify themselves and tell you why they're calling and tell you why they're, what their whole purpose and intent is today, that's a major step in the right direction. So how do you do that and how do you do it quickly and efficiently? The other side is conversational. You've got to engage, especially with these HICS members now. a lot of these folks have never really had health insurance before. We all know that there's a terminology and a kind of a grammar and a vocabulary in this industry that can be really challenging for new members. The whole idea of, co-payments and deductibles and those kinds of things. So it has to be, you have to engage and you have to be intelligent and you have to have it in a form and a fashion that just makes sense, and kind of drop it down to their level so that you don't get them confused. The other part that we've seen in really kind of successfully deploying these types of solutions is it's the whole idea of being proactive. If you know who they are, if they tell you why they're calling or tell you what they're looking for, you use the power of the back-end data to be able to anticipate why and what they're calling about. And if you can help them and almost answer their questions before they've even asked them, man, that's a really, really great thing. So those are the kind of keys that we're looking for. Now, as we move forward, what we're looking to do is to kind of discuss some technologies that support these three strategies. We'll illustrate some concepts, some best practices, and some use cases. And these technologies are the ones that we've seen over many years of the leading organizations across industries, what they're doing. These are the changes. These are the folks that are kind of making themselves the leader in their space by focusing in on member experience, customer experience, at the same time kind of focusing in on the return on investment and making sure that, again, they justify that technology spend and going forward. Vance, you want to lead us with key number 1?
All right. Thank you. So as Jay said, we're really trying to illustrate each of our 3 keys with a technology that we're seeing take hold in the health plan market. So kind of an example that demonstrates exactly what we're talking about with each one of those. So regarding key number 1, an intuitive first point of contact, that can really mean many things and be accomplished through a variety of technologies. It can mean helping people to authenticate more quickly and easily, and many healthcare organizations that we're seeing are achieving this through voice biometrics, so basically using your voice to authenticate, or leveraging natural language understanding in your IVR to make it simple for consumers to get to the help they need, and Jay will discuss that in key number 2. I'm going to focus on another technology that can help a health plan understand what a member or shopper is trying to accomplish and be able to quickly guide them to the right area of a website, whether mobile or desktop, or to the right resource within your organization. And so that's a virtual assistant. Virtual assistants can really help provide more human-like interactions across mobile and web. And an advanced virtual assistant can easily understand who you are, what you say or type, and what you mean by that. So the virtual assistant can then guide a consumer in a conversational, natural way to successful customer service outcomes and offer a seamless cross-channel experience that really helps create loyal members. So these VAs, as we call them, can help a number of different use cases and create a number of benefits for the consumer and the health plan. So whether helping with benefit recommendations, network questions, or other simple transactional tasks related to, say, claims or ID cards, the bottom line is that members or shoppers often hit your website first in that customer journey. So we want to help them address their issue there in a simple, natural, intuitive way. So let's look at a really quick, basic example. I promise this is very, very fast. So that those of you that haven't used one can kind of see what it looks like. And I'm going to perhaps clumsily share my screen here and show a little demo for you.
Grace is a current WellStay Healthcare member with an individual health plan. She is logged into the WellStay One site and is shopping for dental and vision plans. She's currently scanning the dental benefits page.
Let's take a look at this is how one of the 10 largest health plans in the country has used a virtual assistant to improve that first point of contact and the consumer experience while improving efficiency and reducing costs. So this Blues plan, deployed our virtual assistant at the end of July this year, and it's using both English and Spanish versions on their full and mobile websites. So for now, they only have it on the public-facing portion of their site, so it's not integrated with the account login. But they've still seen strong results with 45% of calls deflected and 78% first contact resolution. So a classic win-win situation. Shoppers and members are getting their questions answered through an improved experience without having to call into an agent. And you can see the top questions there that are being addressed on the slide there. I have those two five-item lists for you. And the plan, of course, has reduced its costs. We should see greater improvement once the virtual assistant is placed behind the member login and is able to help members find answers to more specific questions around claims, ID cards, benefits, etc. But so as I mentioned a few slides ago, making that first point of contact, often through your website, easy and intuitive, not only enables the consumer to get their issues addressed through their preferred channel, but can help businesses achieve some impressive results. And so now I'm going to hand off to Jay to discuss key number 2.
Thanks, Vance. So as we turn to kind of the IVR in our key number 2, we're looking at a diagram in terms of a voice IVR system. And as we traditionally know, a lot of these in the past were kind of directed dialogue, in many cases in the many years ago, touch tone types of solutions. Again, nested menus. Best practices over the years were always kind of a 4x4, but we've seen many other organizations deploy lots of different approaches to these types of steps. In essence, right now, what we're doing is we're seeing in many of the leading organizations a move towards the natural language call routing solutions. So in essence, what you do is it's an open-ended, speak freely, kind of tell me what you're calling about. In essence, what it does is regardless of what you ask for, you build and establish grammars to be able to kind of route directly to the appropriate IVR application to be able to address it. So something like, I want to know how many physical therapy visits. It's kind of a benefit-related question. Instead of having to step through seeing the main menu where you've got claims and payments and benefits and other things, in essence, what you're doing is you're just putting the microphone right to the member and saying, you tell me what you're calling about. What it does is it not only kind of inspires utilization right from the beginning, you're kind of giving them the opportunity to state in their own words what they're calling about, but it also has a driver in terms of being able to kind of get more folks to identify themselves. Again, it just streamlines the whole beginning part of any type of voice interactive, voice response type system. So kind of the key that we're seeing here, again, is the deployment of solutions that are just easy and member-friendly. Now, again, I mentioned earlier that no one really does anything for the member experience exclusively. You have to build out the business case. So from a definition standpoint, we look at something that we call call containment. There's a lot of descriptions from a lot of different organizations. They focus on different words, but things like deflection, self-service percentage, call avoidance. There's a lot of different ways to describe it. But from our perspective, call containment is really when someone comes in, they get greeted by the voice response system, and they actually identify, get access to a particular application. They're requesting something. They actually get it answered, and they hang up without transferring to a representative, whether the representative be Tier 1, Tier 2s, in escalation processes. It's really kind of answering the question in the IVR. So there's certain kind of key components of that you have to kind of drive to in looking at call containment. And that's a fully contained call. The other part that we've seen within the healthcare industry is what I call partially contained calls. So if you can persuade a member to identify themselves and give you caller intent, and maybe they ask a question of the IVR, but they're not 100% satisfied, for example, maybe a denied claim, if you can answer some part of the question and then transfer them to the proper representative quickly and efficiently, then that basically is a partially contained call, and it reduces the average handle time. So those are some of the key things in terms of what we look at it. Yes, we want to measure call containment, but we also, as many of you know, you want to look at it in terms of partial containment as well. If you don't have an IVR system that's quick, easy, flexible, efficient, the tendency, as we all know, is to zero out. And in healthcare especially, with our terminology, with the way that these systems have been deployed traditionally in the past, again, focus strictly around containment, that zeroing out or saying representative has been a real kind of popular thing. So what we say is you've really got to focus on why members are kind of dropping out, and any deployment of any level of technology without reporting and good logging and understanding what's happening isn't probably worth it. But if you have a good reporting system and you have a good understanding as to what's happening, you can start to focus in and say, how can I eliminate this zero out response? How can I eliminate people from dropping out of my IVR and try to improve it over time? So as far as kind of rules to maximize containment, you've got to create a great first impression. In many cases, what we've seen is organizations will put hurdles up front in any kind of voice response system. Those are challenges because, you're asking for language. In some cases, you might say you've got high call volume. In other cases, you might say, well, you could really access this via the web at www. Those are all kind of barriers, I think, and they make it some challenging. Now, you have to get things like, member type. You have to get language prompt, but you have to kind of make sure that anything that you say up front is just as quick and as efficient. You have to almost appreciate the member's time and kind of move them through this process efficiently as you can. So make the experience effortless. Don't put barriers to entry. Make it fast. Make it quick. Get them to where they need to get to. And then anticipate their needs. If you can anticipate the member's needs, for example, on a coordination of benefits or a billing, if they're 30 days, behind on billing, there's certain things that you can bring up at the appropriate time to be able to kind of guide them and help them and get to the right spot. So anticipate their needs. That anticipation, by the way, though, really kind of works in the case of getting them to identify themselves. We've talked about this a little bit, unnecessary upfront language. It has to be quick. It has to be efficient. You can't put things up front just to kind of put things up front. Even the whole idea of quality monitoring and recording, I always kind of make the suggestion that put that at the back end when people are kind of transferring out if they're not satisfied in the IVR and they want to transfer to a representative. Don't put that up front. Put that at the back end. So only speak the things that are absolutely necessary. Again, every word, every sentence, every paragraph, and every prompt is precious. So you've really got to kind of watch what you say and when you say it. This is probably one of the single most important kind of key factors of any successful voice response system. As we all know, authentication, identification. Everyone has different approaches, but I think that one of the key factors that we're starting to see more and more of now, it's been working for other industries. It's starting to be able to be worked in the healthcare industry, and that is ANI capture. So to be able to kind of have mobile phone numbers, to be able to have home phone numbers, to have them in a database, so we can identify someone as a member before they've even been greeted is a really good thing. In fact, we can streamline the opening of an IVR interaction by not necessarily have to ask them what type of member they are. Are you a healthcare professional? Are you a shopper? Are you a member? If it's a member and we've got them loaded in the database, we know that. We don't even have to ask the caller type question. We don't even have to ask them the language preference in terms of Spanish or English or anything else because we've been able to kind of pick up ANI. So regardless of whether it's member IDs or social security numbers or dates of births or zip codes or anything else that you've got, the whole idea of being able to streamline the identification and authentication process, make it quick, make it easy, and make it efficient is a major driver in terms of being able to drive utilization. Again, ambiguous intent capture. For years, we would see main menus that would be all the key reasons for self-service, all the things that we could do, like a member ID card, is a great self-serviceable application, but it's not a key reason why people are calling, unless you maybe look at December and January and February. For the most part, we all know that eligibility and benefits and claim status and those kinds of things are the high volume, the high runners. So you've really got to make sure that you look at your main menu and or your natural language call router to be able to support and have the grammars, the vocabulary in place to be able to understand what people are saying and how to kind of grasp that and either route them efficiently and quickly to self-service or route them efficiently, to a representative. So again, ambiguous intent capture, you've really got to kind of focus on the key reasons why people are calling. The long prompts, and again, the grammars and the prompts are super, super important. Again, it's just something that if you go on spewing information to individuals, they're not going to have the patience for it. An IVR interaction is you've got time that's not on your side. You know, if it's a web interaction, you've got plenty of time that you can kind of take to navigate through web pages. But with an interactive voice response, a voice call, people just don't have the patience to be able to go on and on and on for multiple minutes trying to hear you say and speak and spew information. They want quick, efficient answers. And so this is kind of the key in terms of any of the prompts that you've got. They've got to be really, really clear, concise, and just streamlined as best you possibly can. The fifth one, you know, an agent intercept. You have to have agents that are available. This is one of the kind of key features in terms of depending on your organization and how it's staffed and how the contact center is organized and what your average seconds to answer are. You know, there's an opportunity here that says it's going to take X amount of minutes to be able to get to a representative, but oh, by the way, would you like to do this? And in a conversational, easy, efficient manner, be able to kind of persuade the member to basically move into the IVR and navigate to other areas within the IVR. So again, making available representatives, but also using it at the proper time. This is probably one of the biggest ones that we're starting to see now. Because the channels are just not voice and customer service reps, the web has been around for a long time, mobile applications are around for a long time. We see them traditionally as almost siloed channels for self-service. In essence, the really leading organizations, the good ones, are starting to integrate those channels so that I know if someone's been on the web, you know, for 5 or 10 minutes trying to get some customer service related application, benefit information, et cetera, and now all of a sudden they call. Do I have a level of knowledge and understanding of who they are and the fact that they've just spent time in looking at benefits for 10 minutes or so? So we're starting to see this both for members as well as providers, where there's a more integrated channel experience, and each channel has a job description. You know, it's got to pull its own weight, and certainly what you can do with a customer service rep or what you can do on the web far surpasses what you can do in the IVR. But I think the key on everything in terms of channels is consistency. The answer that you get using the IVR for claim status, for example, should be the same answer. The back-end data integration should be at the same level regardless of channel that you're looking at. So this is a direction, again, moving forward in a more integrated, omni-channel, multi-channel approach. That's something that we're seeing some of the best and largest and the kind of, you know, the leading edge kind of healthcare organizations move to. So again, those are some tips and some hints in regards to the IVR. I'm turning it back to Vance for key number 3.
All right. Thanks, Jay. So key number 3 is it's really all about being proactive. And that can mean, as Jay mentioned, ensuring that your various channels share enough data to make for a consistent member experience. Maybe enabling your IVR to use the knowledge that a premium payment reminder was sent out, and that's why the member is calling in. But proactive engagement is perhaps the most effective tool for delivering on this key. So a little about that. Proactive engagement delivers results by blending the scalability and efficiency of automated solutions with typically a sophisticated personalization based on known preferences and previous response patterns. So orchestrating the use of the channels most preferred by your members, including voice, text, email, and even smartphone push notifications, helps to ensure successful engagement. For our part, the Nuance platform's individual decisioning engine is enabled to use past consumer actions or implicit preferences to use specific languages, days of the week, times of day for specific consumers. So pretty advanced. And of course, many vendors, in addition to us, are able to integrate with a variety of systems of record or use batch files if the client prefers to deliver the right applications to the right members at the right time. So whether you're trying to drive improved enrollment in a health program, boosting quality measure compliance, or notifying a member of their application status, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, we're meeting the member on the preferred channel, and that's the key. So when a consumer takes action within the application, of course, as well, such as responses, confirmations, answers, all those results are passed back to the client. So Proactive engagement is, I've used that name here. It's known in the market by many names like automated outreach, proactive notifications, or automated communications, but the value of the technology is certainly the same. We're reducing costs by deflecting live calls and reducing the need for outbound calls. We're improving results by using past behaviors to engage members on their channel of preference, and we're enhancing the member experience by reaching them when they want with the right information. So that's that anticipatory part that we were talking about. And as you might guess, there are a number of use cases that can be addressed with proactive engagement, whether you're anticipating that members may call in regarding the enrollment application or to check and see if their ID card has been sent. I know that those are calls that everybody's getting. So what you see here is a simple example of sending the right information at the right time to deflect an inbound call. Or this is becoming increasingly common too, for sure. Another member may opt to select text reminders about her premium payments. So this is a good example of leveraging one channel to route a member to another one, or cross-channel. And in this case, making it easy to call into an IVR to make that payment, or clicking on a link so that she can make an online payment through her phone. So you see her kind of giving permission on the left-hand side there earlier on, and then later on getting a kind of a timely premium payment reminder. She could either click on that phone number on the top screen there, or go ahead and click on the URL there on the bottom screen, and that could go right into a mobile version of your site where she could go ahead and log in and make her payment online. Smartphone push notifications are also an option if your plan has a smartphone app, and most plans do. So letting a member know that they have a claim status available, making them aware of new benefits, or pushing other information to them, not only gives them access and improves their experience, but it boosts the usage of your mobile app, and that's an issue for many plans and many companies in general. It's one thing to get a member to download an app initially, but quite another really to lead them to it and get them to use it on an ongoing basis. And again, you're enabling members to have access to self-service and thus reducing the number of calls in. So you're kind of seeing a pattern through many of these types of technologies. And of course, email is still the preferred channel of many members, particularly kind of not older generations, not the best way to put it, but as you go up in those generations, there's kind of an increasing reliance on email. Of course, it's a more expensive channel than some of the others that we talked about, including automated voice and texting. But it is particularly useful, I would say, for messages that aren't necessarily urgent or don't need to be read that same day. So this is, I think, a really good, relevant example of what we've been discussing, and that comes from eHealth Insurance. This is the first and largest private health insurance exchange in the country. And in fact, for those of you on the line that work for a health plan, your health plan is probably offered through eHealth. So basically, in an effort to deflect inbound calls and focus their call center agents on more high-value interactions, eHealth chose to automate a significant portion of the outreach required to communicate about missing information and to keep consumers aware of their application status. So working with us, Nuance, they implemented a proactive engagement solution to automate routine communications and to quickly compose and send ad hoc messages as well, as needed, in response to changing circumstances. So that included, some of the deadline extensions that we saw and the process updates in either open enrollment period. So specifically, eHealth first leveraged email and then automated voice calls to communicate with consumers on the topics that you see on the slide there. Then, as the 2014 enrollment period came to a close, eHealth became aware of another emerging need, and that was requests for text notifications instead of email or automated voice. And those requests have been growing significantly. So in preparation for the 2015 enrollment cycle, eHealth asked us to help them develop an effective text message strategy. eHealth had previously asked customers to provide contact information and give their permission for voice notifications. But unfortunately, they were unable to discern if the contact number was for a mobile or a landline phone. And this is really, really common for a lot of organizations, is not really noting within your system of record whether that phone number is mobile or home or work, and certainly whether it's a landline or a mobile phone. So basically, they didn't know if they had the ability to send a text to many of these phone numbers. We resolved that issue with land cell determination software. So that was able to identify mobile phone numbers and then dynamically add on a message asking the customer if they would prefer to receive future notifications via text message. So imagine you get this automated voice message. It's letting you know that the plan has received your application or one of those other topics there. And then at the end of the message, they say, would you prefer to receive this message in the future as a text message? But we would only append that message at the end of it if we knew that the phone was a mobile phone. So this preference for text was captured by us and then provided to eHealth to hold in their customer database. And this innovative step enabled eHealth to ensure that they had appropriately documented permissions to allow them to use text messaging, and that's really key. And then, of course, by implementing text messaging, eHealth was able to give consumers the ability to take action when it was convenient for them, enable them to dial the provided phone number, like we saw on the earlier example, or access a website by clicking on a URL from within the text message. So if you look at the series of notifications, I think it gives a really good indication of the direction health plans can go. They may not be necessarily the exact same messages, but I think the same sort of kind of process of status updates. So the results. The option of receiving text messages was really well received by mobile customers. The text opt-in rate from customers receiving the Nuance automated voice message varied from 50 to 70% depending on the month. The cost of the text message, of course, is only around 3 cents. So for those customers shifting to text for status notifications and updates, eHealth saw a nearly 99% per message cost savings over a live call. They also achieved a really impressive 95% engagement rate. So that's tracked as a percent of customers actually interacting with the automated messages in some fashion. And of course, during this period of significant change for consumers, I think it's really important to note that eHealth was very pleased to be able to maintain a customer satisfaction score of 4.41 out of 5, even with all the new questions and confusion about the law's impact on insurance plans. So, kind of to before we move onto a kind of a final wrap-up and questions, I'd like to touch on the concept of intelligent self-service. This is pretty brief, but I think it's important and it kind of conceptualizes what we've been talking about here. So putting the principles we've been discussing so far into practice requires really a certain set of capabilities, as you can probably guess. The first is interactivity, and that gives the technology its human characteristics and the ability to understand language, grasp intent, engage in a dialogue, and recognize specific speech characteristics. This is a kind of a unique kind of skill set that Nuance has. And you need the flexibility to deploy into a variety of environments, whether that's in the cloud or on-premise, because every business is different and situations change. So let's talk about channels then. It's essential to have a voice solution that empowers customers to self-service even when the situation is complex. And of course, outbound channels that allow you to proactively engage customers before issues arise, deflecting inbound call volume and increasing customer satisfaction. And you finally need to ensure that your digital channels, the web and your mobile app, have a conversational interface just like your IVR, so that they're easy to use and to offer a consistent experience. When those elements are in place, you have the ability to offer intelligent, multi-channel self-service experiences to your members, and as a result, increase both your use of automation and increase your customer satisfaction scores. And the goal, of course, in the end, to retain customers. So that's really the main part of our presentation. I want to wrap up with any questions that may have been submitted through our WebEx dashboard. Alex, I think, has been looking at those.
Yeah, so we had a few questions come in over the course of the presentation, but if you have any that come to mind right now, feel free to type those into the Q&A box, and I'll try to get to them if we have some time. The first question that came through, I believe this is probably directed towards you, Jay, and it is, can you describe some of the approaches that leading organizations have used in increasing the percentage of caller identifying in the, probably identification in the IVR?
Okay, thanks, Alex. So I guess we've seen it all. We've seen organizations that have very small percentage, probably less than 30% of member identification. We've seen it all the way up to probably better than 70%. of members identifying themselves in the IVR. I think there's a couple of kind of key things, especially now. I mentioned Annie capture is just such a big, important piece. When we've asked over the years, many organizations in this healthcare industry, do you know and understand your members? They always say yes. But when we ask, do you have their mobile numbers? Do you have their home numbers? Do you have their email addresses? What percentage of them are registered for the web? Those kinds of things. The better job that you can do to be able to understand who your members are and those phone numbers, Annie capture is a tremendous advantage in terms of increasing the percentage because you're catching something up front that they don't even have to kind of speak or enter or do anything with. So Annie capture is clearly one of the keys. The other ways to do it is really, it might sound a little challenging, but the whole idea of the caller intent capture, when the caller intent capture comes after the greeting, where you're basically asking the member to tell you in their own words why they're calling, and they've got control over the call, and they can speak the reason for call, you've got a higher kind of propensity of them actually providing the member identification number. I think that clearly the whole design of an IVR system, if it's quick, fast, efficient, then you'll get people to increase. They'll play, they'll access, they'll put in their member identification numbers. They'll be able to put in their dates of birth because they know that it's being, again, either routing to self-service or routing to the proper level. So a lot of it has to do, it's just not a simple, okay, this is what I need. There's a lot of component parts that surround kind of growing or increasing the percentage of identification. Clearly, we know that if you're going to drive more self-service, if you're going to drive more efficient routing, if you're going to eliminate transfer calls, the key of all of this is trying to pick up identification information. So those are some of the strategies that we've seen. Specifically, Annie is a real big step in the right direction.
Great. Thanks, Jay. So our next question is, the virtual assistant example is pretty new. Do you have any more established examples? I'm wondering about the consistency of the figures. Vance, is that one?
Yeah, I can answer that one. That virtual assistant example is fairly new. I wanted to include that one because it was, obviously a large health plan, so kind of industry specific. I did think about including this other case study that I have from Windstream. And so this is in another industry, but like we talked about, I think it's relevant. Other industries are relevant. We're all kind of tasked with creating the same consumer experiences for those members that they're going to have with other companies. So the numbers, I think, for this other one, Windstream, which is they supply high-speed internet, digital TV, home phone, that sort of thing. They have pretty consistent figures and some kind of different metrics, but I have here, they had 71% of interactions contained and a 78% first contact resolution rate, so very consistent with what we saw in the other one. And I think this is kind of an interesting element that I would add on to it. They also had a live chat capability as well on their website, so not, you have the chat window that's not with a virtual assistant, with a live person on the other end. I know I've done that with, I do that with Comcast every once in a while. They had a 45% reduction in live chat as well. So the interesting thing then is that even when they did have people that needed to transfer to live chat, there was a seamless handoff to the human agents that kind of ensured customers didn't have to start over. So it would just automatically kind of flip over to this live chat if the virtual assistant wasn't able to handle the question. But still, like I said, a 45% reduction in live chat. And so that kind of brings to mind, this is interesting, Jay and I were having this conversation the other day. I have this background with a clinical guidelines practice back before I came to Nuance, and we talked a lot about kind of the concept of step-down care, finding the most appropriate level of care for a patient or member, whether that be, in an ICU or a regular floor or in a recovery facility or home health or what have you. There are more appropriate levels of care, and those happen to be, as you step down, less expensive levels of care. And I kind of view that as analogous to what we're talking about with all these different technologies, is the live interaction with an agent being really kind of the most expensive level of care, if you will. And as you step down through these different levels from an online chat to to those that are completely automated, like you know, an outbound text message or a virtual assistant or something in the IVR. Those are those lower levels of care that are less expensive but more appropriate for these kind of just more transactional questions. So I think very similar. We have any more questions?
Yeah, one final question came through, and it is, why would a healthcare organization spend time and money in the voice channel when web and mobile are becoming so prevalent? Good question.
That's Jay.
Jay? Okay.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So clearly, channel choices are great. The more choices you can provide for members, the better off you are. The key is to try to make them as consistent as you possibly can. But I think one of the keys that we've seen is while the web has increased in terms of members that have, you know, logged on, gotten usernames and passwords, and they're utilizing that to understand benefits and what their coverages are. And as much as we've seen all the mobile applications be deployed out there for many, many healthcare organizations, we haven't necessarily seen call volume drop tremendously. There's good reasons in this industry. It's, again, as we all know, some major challenges for especially the HICS, the exchange members, the individual and small group members to really truly understand even what they're reading on a website or what they see in a mobile phone. So I think that clearly we see a lot of channels now. They're more than they were before, and channel choices are great across all different types of member segments. But the key thing is I think that we're still seeing a tremendous amount of inbound call activity, and we want to make sure that we're treating those members quickly, efficiently, and getting them routed to the right place. Clearly, I think that, you know, across the board, we need to be able to kind of invest and look and improve all of the channels. But I think clearly what we're seeing is that voice channel is not kind of dropping off the table, so to speak. In this industry, there's still a tremendous amount of inbound calls, and we need to figure out a way to quickly and efficiently handle them and route them.
Okay. So I guess that was the last question. So that's it for today. Thanks so much for attending. If you'd like a copy of the slide deck, please reach out to Fred Allison, whose email address and phone number on the screen. Also, I'd really encourage you to, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have by email or what have you. I'd also be happy to provide a link to the demo that I failed at providing during the webinar. And I would also say that I have a lot of different resources that I'm always happy to share with people, including the Wakefield survey data, some great health consumer survey data that really drills down into behaviors and desires of members, slice and dice a lot of different ways and different demographics. So I love to share that material and different examples of ways to use these technologies that are certainly easy to share internally too. So with that, again, thanks a lot for attending. Jay?
Have a great day.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.